All right, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Enough to Keep Going podcast. It is episode 148. We are almost there, almost at the 150 mark. Granted, we've rebooted and restarted, and this is not our legacy numbering, but we are here at 148 for the E2KG network on the Enough to Keep Going podcast. This is our gamer experience show for part 2 for the second time in June here. This is the week of June 18th. I am your host, DBqHams. Joining me is Agasicles, who is manning the wheels of steel, making sure that we are broadcasting and recording and haven't burned out our welcome at this point. But on the E2KG network every other week, we are coming to you with our game experience show. This is our playlist. This is our what we've been playing, talking through not only the games that we've been playing over the last 2 weeks or so, but also talking about our game assignment. Every other week, we give ourselves an assignment. We are grown-ups who game. We are gaming adults, gaming parents. We are gaming, well, I was going to say professionals, but we are professionals in other lights, and we just game on the side, but appreciate the hobby, the passion, and the community that it creates. So thank you for joining us tonight, or whenever you are watching and listening this, to be part of our community. Continue to join, continue to engage with us. We, every other week at our game experience show, we're going to talk about what we're playing, but in those off weeks, in the deep dive episodes, we're diving into the week's news, the last 2 weeks' news, and actually this whole month has been full of plenty of news. Even tonight we had the release of EA Play. They're hosted by Greg Miller. This was EA's kind of E3-like showcase. I gotta say, I really hope that we give you a better impression tonight than EA Play did for everybody else watching it. If you made it through those 52 minutes or so and were not disappointed, congratulations. If the announcement of Skate 4 was enough to pick up the show for you, that's great. Having Star Wars Squadrons, the X-Wing TIE Fighter space sim fighting game, be kind of leaked, and then the trailer coming out last week, or at the beginning of this week, took a little bit of the wind out of it, but hopefully tonight we've got plenty of wind behind our sails and things to cover as well. Agasicles, how are you doing tonight?
I'm good. Well,
and we're all good on the show because you looked pretty worried there for a little while.
Yeah. I just need to make sure nothing from my real world life is on display in the background. So I had to.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough.
Shuffle away a whiteboard. But yeah, it was a
long
day.
Appreciate.
Yeah, it was a long day. It's one of those days where I came down and immediately started working at my day job computer at like 7:30 in the morning, and didn't really stop until it was almost time to podcast. So there we go.
Yeah, right. And not having a commute suddenly means that you can get to work a little earlier, and they expect that. It doesn't take long before that becomes the expectation, right?
Yeah, we're in the middle of a reorg this week, and there was a lot of yammer on the phone from I think a lot of people who are a little removed from the direct contribution line. So they were like, "Oh yeah, we're so much more efficient." I'm like, "Yes, except for all of you guys who now schedule meetings back to back and leave no time for the rest of us to get extra work done." So, yeah.
Yes, I can appreciate that. Yeah. Anyhow, let's dive in. Our gaming assignment this past 2 weeks has been about audio. That as we were making sure that the audio here worked for you all tonight, we also recognize and acknowledge that audio in games can really make a big difference, right? It doesn't always get a lot of notice. Granted, unless you're Sony, you're kind of pitching the 3D audio for the PlayStation 5. They're definitely trying to give it some notice. So we wanted to go back and pick out some games, some genres, and to play a little bit to see what we notice, what we recognize within the audio as well. So give a little bit of time to sit back and enjoy some audio, regardless of your setup, whether you're on headphones or on speakers or just coming out of your TV as your air conditioner is cranked up and you're trying to listen along with it as well. So myself, I'm sporting my Milwaukee Bucks hat tonight because that is where my NBA 2K My Career Player is playing for at this point. So I have my audio assignment. I went back to both NBA 2K and to MLB The Show to get a sense of some real world sounds. So we can't be at a sporting event. We can't even watch a sporting event. I shouldn't say we can't. We shouldn't, right? We shouldn't be at a sporting event. And soon we will be able to be watching sports again on TV. Granted, there are some leagues starting up already with soccer and golf. But we have... So diving in and playing a game where the stands are full, there's crowds that are cheering, there's music that's being pumped in, putting on the headphones and hearing that, you hear the crowd noises, you hear the different audio cues. In basketball, you certainly hear the squeaks on the floor, you hear the calls for a pass or the screen, you can hear one of the things I appreciate as somebody who played as a kid, the sound that a good swish makes, right? You can feel that in your gut, and you also know the pain of like that kind of metal clank or the bad hit off the backboard. You can recognize those sounds and they evoke kind of that real experience. Same thing with baseball, with MLB The Show, that the sound of a solid hit off the bat. The sound as somebody, through Little League and youth ball and high school, played at basically every position at some point in time. It's never really a good pitcher, but I could catch. So I distinctly know that sound of a good hard pitch hitting the sweet spot in the mitt of a catcher's, and having that kind of squish, but also solid impact, and feeling the sting in your hand afterwards. So it was nice to go back and play some of those. I think one of the things you notice listening to audio in sports games is the commentary. Is that commentary does not necessarily change, and the commentary is hard to do, even if you're playing a live game, but to do kind of canned lines and have them feel unique or relevant over the course of a 80-some game NBA season or 100-some game MLB season, it's kind of stretching it, right? So there's some expectation here that I'm going to hear some of the same things, but you end up kind of, sometimes it also makes, when you hear something that's relevant, when it's timely, it stands out to you a little bit more as well. I guess because one of the things that I was struck by playing basketball and baseball and thinking of kind of where we're at in the world is, as these two leagues are preparing to start up or potentially trying to start up, depending on where MLB ends up. But so much of the experience of the actual sport or the experience of playing it on a video game is the crowd noise, is the musical cues. Baseball and basketball both, right? You're pumping in sound, there's music, there's you get the organ coming, there's all kinds of different things that happen. And so I'm wondering, when like the NBA starts back up in Orlando, will they pipe in music? Will you get hype music? Will you get kind of, if you're the home team, will you get to play the same type of sounds that would play when you make a big a big fast break or a big dunk, or, will you get some of those same audio cues, or are they going to be playing not only without any stands, but also kind of in kind of a sound vacuum? And so thinking about this assignment within our own life experiences, that it suddenly made those sounds stand out even more, because there's the real acknowledgement that they may not exist, at least for this season.
Well, the thing that's weird, and that's that contrast in reality, I think, from the way we perceive things and we think about things. Like, I remember as a kid playing basketball and being super pumped, like when you were playing basketball, like in a gym, and there was music, your music being piped in, or you had your boombox, on the bench or whatever. But and we think of, like, I mean, we're not pro athletes, obviously. I never had that experience, like being on a field or a court, around professional athletes. But we think in our heads of them playing with music in the background, but like the sounds that they're experiencing are like starkly different. Like if you ever heard like a professional athlete like mic'd, while they're playing, like the on court sounds are like radically different than like you think of them in your head. And so with amongst all the talk of, different shows and sports and whatever having, laugh tracks and clap tracks and keynotes, with cheering and stuff piped in, it's going to be interesting as we go throughout the year. MLB has one of the things you mentioned and that I was thinking about was, and this is very interesting that you chose sports games as your flavor du jour of, what you went after for this assignment. One of the things that's very interesting is where we are from an audio perspective in comparison. You talked about a little bit about the commentary track. Like I remember playing like Sega, Madden NFL on my Sega Genesis, just after college, and like how often like. I mean, Madden's a nice guy and everything, but like just over and over and over, like the same. I mean, it's already kind of master of the oblivious, when he's talking anyway. But hearing that on the commentary track was just so excruciating sometimes. NHL 20, I kind of wish I still played on consoles. NHL 20 has an amazing commentary track on it, where yes, you hear some of the lines over again, but there's a lot of banter back and forth between the co-hosts. And I think I mentioned a few weeks ago when I talked about it for part of our Let's Play discussion, I mentioned how, like, in certain instances you will get Snoop Dogg on the track going back and forth with the commentators, who I didn't know Snoop was even a hockey fan. But we're just so far beyond, where we were, 20 years ago in terms of a sports game commentary track. It's really amazing. Obviously, what would be really interesting is we can't be too far from the notion of artificial intelligence, machine learning being used to, I'm sure they're already used in some ways, to queue up, which specific line out of the commentary track it goes after in response to, different actions on the court, on the field or whatever. But, we can't be too far from the commentary track actually just being, spoken words, and then the use of AI and ML to actually then put together the sentence, that a particular co-host says. So it should be pretty amazing. I keep, we talk a lot about the computing power of new consoles and what it means for, new graphics and stuff like that. But, as I constantly refer back to, like, what's really amazing are the things that are, like, not directly in the obvious target eye bullseye of, what most fans will consider. We talk about variable rate shading on the next Xbox, which is really the most exciting thing. Like, bringing a lot of power is great, but, like, applying that power in a way that actually makes sense is what's really exciting. And so the evolution of audio in game design in that same vein will also be super interesting with some of the new audio implementations that the PS5 and Xbox Series X are talking about.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point in terms of the commentary and what's potential there. For so long, sports games are great podcast games for me, right? Like I don't need to listen to the commentary track, other than being able to maybe hear if there's an audio cue for something. But for the most part, there's enough information on the screen to be able to make my decisions and play the game. And maybe that is a result of playing sports games in the 8, 16, and 32-bit eras where it really wasn't much of a commentary to talk about other than like some tackle sounds or something else, right? Or other than the same comments over and over again. So to hear that is interesting to think about. So I spent my time kind of in the real world, but you dove into something a little more fantastical. So give us your game pick and kind of where you took that.
Yeah, man, talk about, a lot of the theme tonight will probably be comfort food. Which just, it's kind of a new year for me because kind of historically my gaming year has objectively and specifically been about not being a comfort food gamer, and playing things that are, outside your box and outside your comfort zone. Gears of War, Ultimate Edition is, clearly a wheelhouse game. It harkens back to, really the apogee of like my enjoyment of consoles. As a device and as a platform back in, I think 2006 or 6, 7, or 8. I can't remember when the first Gears came along. Had to be 6.
But did it 6 was 5
maybe it was
it launched
7.
in? So yeah,
it launched in 5. So I think it was.
You talk, I'll fact check.
Yeah. So obviously Cliff Bleszinski, was heavily involved in the creation of this game. It's a cover shooter, which I realize, more than anything these days, I like more than just a straight up shooter. I've always, I was a big fan of the Rainbow Six series back when it was actually a cover shooter, not what the thing is now. But I've always been a huge fan of cover shooters. Gears of War obviously made the in-game avatars and animation like very burly. And that was a bit of a transition for people to make and become accustomed to. It introduced the term burly run, the big hunched over, highly mechanistic run, or dash kind of move where you had some level of control, but some not.
Your roadie run aspect of it all?
Roadie run, yeah, sorry.
Yep.
It's the roadie run. Roadie run in Gears of War, burly brawl is what I was thinking about in the Matrix. I really meant roadie run though. This assignment was specifically about audio. I had a ton of fun. Let's just get that off the bat. Going back to Gears of War, playing it in Ultimate Edition on a DirectX box on PC. I played this on a PC with a GTX 1070 in it. It looks gorgeous, amazing. Dripping with detail. But, the audio, not so much. I mean, audio quality is good. This doesn't approach like a Call of Duty Modern Warfare or, Resident Evil. I mentioned, in the write-up for this assignment as being, examples of just amazing, incredible audio design. Even Ori and the Will of the Wisps, right, is pretty amazing with the emotions that thing evokes with its track, particularly with how the music in Ori and the Will of the Wisps intermixes with on-screen action. But, one thing that's true about Gears of War is that it has, again, a lot of, like, very memorable audio cues in it. I was really surprised, first of all, just in the audio track, how it does a really great job of the cueing of the music, like, amping up when you're about to be attacked, and then the music going back down to a more, kind of, I wouldn't quite say calm, but more of a reasonable, like, kind of lilting theme, when the wave is over, and helps a lot to cue you into, like, when there's another enemy still on screen somewhere, even if you can't see it, right? The hype music is still going. So that was pretty amazing. But also just the individual audio cues, like the weaponage of Gears of War in its audio is incredibly distinct. So, like, there's just nothing like the sound of the Lancer's, like, chainsaw spooling up, right? There's just nothing like that. There's also nothing like when it doesn't work, right? Like when you go to hit the button and you're in some weird, like, a hitbox area where the chainsaw, like, doesn't go off and you're expecting that sound and it doesn't happen. Like, you're like, just like, like the number of times that I was cursing under my breath because that blasted thing didn't go off because I was, like, too close to the enemy, or many times when you're an idiot and you think you have the Lancer arm but you actually got, like, the hammer burst or something, armed and you expect the chainsaw to go off, but you wind up executing a melee attack or something like that. But it was just great. I'd also kind of really forgotten the audio of the vehicular stages in Gears of War. You know, when you go to the gas station and get the APC or whatever, and then are driving it back to meet up back with the other two Gears, with Baird and Coltrane, who had been left behind at the what do they call them, the stranded or whatever camp. So, you know, very, very distinctly audio, you know, burly audio when that thing starts up, you know, and then you're driving along and then crashing into everything, you know, on the highway in an effort to rush back. So it's a pretty amazing audio experience. You know, you intermix that with like the stages where you have the, I think they're called the Krill, are coming in, the ones that attack you whenever you're in a, you know, unlit area outside. Just, first of all, amazingly annoying enemy. Like, it's like, would get to you so much when you're like, I swore I was under the light, like, you know, because you got one elbow or whatever that's in the dark. But that cue of that sound of like when exactly that happens, when you are certain that you're in a lit area, but like one part of your body is in the darkness, you know, that precursor of like the high shriek of the Krill, you know, notifying you that they're coming in, and like the split second that you have to roadie run, you know, and leap into a combat role and get into a lit area, is just pretty highly emotion evoking. So it's a pretty awesome experience. I really enjoyed going back. You know, there's a little bit of a feeling and concern like when you're on PC. I don't know if people go through this, but you know, things are so highly detailed, but you're also playing at such a high resolution that sometimes you feel like you don't get the visceralness of like a gear occupying like 50% of your in-game view. You like feels different. But in those cases, I feel like that audio experience is even more pertinent. So good times were had.
Nice. Yeah, I remember I played back through it 2017, 18 on Xbox, and yeah, you're right. I mean, that audio still holds up. I mean, that the audio design of that certainly holds up, and the skittering and the you know, there's a certain pop that happens. You know, I appreciate that. That's good. So we're going to move into our round robin rundown, but I'm going to make a transition here. It doesn't really count as a transition since I'm naming it as a transition, but really one of the games so this past week, a weekend, we had the PC game show, and Steam came out with 60, 80 some different game demos that you can try over the next 2 weeks or so. Little snippets, you know, little cross sections of variety of games, variety of genres. So I downloaded a couple of them, and one of them, which has just some really solid sound design, is Grounded by Obsidian. So Grounded is the Obsidian kind of survival game. It's Honey, I Shrunk the Kids survival game. You are a human shrunk down inside a backyard, and you start off, and you know, because it's a survival game, you've got to pick up resources, you've got to craft some weapons, you find little, you know, somehow there's little scanning tables that if you scan certain resources that you pick up, you'll learn what they can be crafted into. You know, the skittering aspect, listening to, you can hear bugs kind of crawling around you, right? That you're smaller than an ant goes up to your chest. You know, so you are a relatively small instance here, and you are, which I guess actually if an ant only went up to your chest, it's probably not proportioned correctly given how maybe not so tall the blades of grass seem. So maybe the person here has cut their lawn so very frequently. But all in all, the sound design there of hearing a variety of different bugs, and the bugs sounded a little different. You know, the sound of a spider's legs versus a fly buzzing in. You know, an ant will come up to you if you don't attack it. Actually, I attacked it the first time, and it ran away, and then I got worried that it was going to run back to its colony, and they were going to come find me, so I ended up killing the ant. But the second ant I found, I didn't attack it. I followed it. It kind of approached me but didn't attack. It just kind of like looked at me, sensed me. And as I was communing with this ant, I heard a fly come buzzing in, and it lands close, and it's some type of infected fly that exploded on me, and so I died. Right, but again, the sound design of that was, the fly kind of popping. It had almost like a pustule type sound to it, so it was, right. That's about the right face I think it's trying to go for there. But I think it is. One question I had.
So being a kid who grew up in a state which is heavily insect infested, and like tons of mosquitoes all the time. Like I have this innate, I don't want to call it a gag reflex, but an innate like very high level of irritation whenever I hear the sound of like an insect buzzing like near your ear. Like it makes my skin crawl. It makes me itch. So I'm wondering, like, does this game kind of evoke that kind of a reaction from you, and hearing all kind of all the insect sounds in close proximity to you?
Yes, it gives you that sense of like your head's on a swivel suddenly, trying to like swat at something, right? Like, certainly if you have. So my son played it as well, who doesn't care for bugs, and it was interesting to watch him play because it completely gave that reaction. Like, he had this kind of, physical reaction to hearing those sounds, like, hearing something crawl up behind him. There were physical reactions there. So it was kind of good to see that was effective, right? There is a arachnophobia mode. So I think it maybe turns down some of the intensity of the bugs or the spiders.
So is this an actual like accessibility mode within the game that's designed for people who actually have like that? Wow. Okay.
That's my understanding. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So, and this game it's out on Steam, but it's also on Game Pass. If you're an Xbox insider, you can download. It's only a half-hour demo, it's a half hour of gameplay, but it's out next week. It's out on the 28th, for a week and a half, so not too much time. I played a couple others. The list was so long, I had to kind of go back. I just looked at either things that kind of seemed a cross-section or a variety of things. Played Pop-Up Dungeons, which is kind of like a dungeon crawler, but it's almost like a tabletop adventure that you're building on your own, that you it's got a really neat kind of like papercraft aesthetic. Maybe that's because I've been playing Bug Fables or thinking about Paper Mario, but it has almost like, you had this art project in the back of a magazine that you folded up and made a little square character out of. It's got, you can actually load in assets and make them, kind of edit them out as popsicle characters to be characters in your game. And then it's somewhat of a map-based dungeon crawler with a little bit of card deck, not necessarily deck building, but card battling in there as well. Like, you're going to get a series of 2 or 3 cards, and you can choose to, maybe one will be a status effect, or it will be an attack or some type of defense equip, things like that. So it's kind of, it actually, I got the vibe of, it's a game that I really want to play more of after people have built different campaigns in it, right? Like, I don't know that I have the bandwidth to sit down and build a campaign within it, but it gives you those tools. It's specifically created so that people can build kind of their own little, pop-up book adventure dungeon D&D experience. So kind of neat, kind of creative, great aesthetic. And then I went in a totally different direction with 8-Bit Adventures 2, which is really just an 8-bit RPG. But going back to sound design, it definitely hits those kind of audio cues of that, right in between the Nintendo and the Nintendo 64. So a little bit better audio chip, it sounds like, than what you would probably get on a Nintendo, but not quite at the 16-bit level. Liberated was another game that I played as a comic fan. Liberated looks like a black and white graphic novel that you're actually playing within panels. So, almost not to the same degree of like Comic Zone, but certainly in that same aspect, a little more committing to the bit than Comic Zone of, you really are moving from panel to panel. When you're in a panel, it's a stealth action game. And so you can kind of navigate within a panel a little bit, but then when you hit the extent of the landscape that you can explore or where you're supposed to go within that panel, you move on to the next panel. And maybe the next panel is part of a story beat, or it's another little puzzle, stealth puzzle type of thing. But it's really kind of noir, but it's almost like a noir cyberpunk. It's set in the future, not too far, like in the 2020s, but definitely has kind of a Tron Legacy, Daft Punk type of opening, but then feels almost like a really polished kind of Frank Miller Sin City type of graphic style. So going from that graphic style to a much more colorful, cartoony, I played CrisTales. So CrisTales is a kind of throwback RPG is what it's billing itself. It's coming out for PC and for platforms this summer, I think in July actually, or August. And it feels like, it feels a little bit like Indivisible, the RPG from the Skullgirls creator from last year. It has kind of that Mario RPG, Paper Mario aspect of timing a button press to block for an attack or to get some extra damage. But the neat kind of twist here in this kind of standard format is you're playing with time to such a degree that you have crystals that can move you backwards in time or forwards in time. So on your screen, your main view is almost like a pyramid in the center of your screen. And as you look on both sides, like one is the landscape in the past and one is the landscape in the future. And so it ends up kind of showing you a little bit of both. And sometimes you need to use that to then get, solve some puzzles within or damage an enemy that the first enemy in the kind of boss of the demo has a big shield, but one of your characters has water, and then if you jump forward in time, it rusts the shield, and then you can attack them. And so it'll be interesting to see how much of that feels kind of, kind of grafted on, or how much it actually kind of plays with and allows some creativity, where if it just is the only way you can beat this is with the time mechanic, or if the time mechanic allows kind of the flexibility to solve some things in different ways. So a lot of games out there on the Steam demo pieces, so lots to play and try out.
So talk to me a little bit about why. So we in the last few years, we've definitely, I don't think I've ever recovered from like the 1 year that we dove deep on playing demos. Like I just spent so much time playing games that I determined in the demo phase I was going to bounce off of. And that's good for gamers, probably for the normal real world gamer who wants to test something out before they plunk their money down. For me, it as a podcaster and a / game reviewer, it was painful because we spent time playing those, to wind up then not playing them when they actually came out, and it wound up just taking time away from getting through making progress in other games to report on. I can't remember. We played. I mean, we were in betas, for first person.
We played the Division quite a bit.
Yes,
yeah,
right.
We did. Yep.
Right, and the Ghost Recon beta and things like that. So just out of curiosity, was this? I mean, emotionally, was this for you kind of your virtual E3 equivalent, because you were able to play many times in the past these games would have been on the show floor at E3 and we wouldn't have been able to play them. Yep. But in this case, this year we were. So is that why you went after that content?
So I would say half the reason is that these were games that during the PC Game Show they piqued my interest. Right, I was interested in Grounded beforehand because just the concept of kind of the the backyard aspect of it. So I was really curious to see how that kind of came together.
Well, and the Obsidian pedigree, right?
Exactly. Yep. The Liberated game, because of kind of the graphic novel aspect of that, being a comic fan and a graphic novel fan, I was really interested to see how they, what that looks like. Again, this is one where like I love to look at it, and actually I'm glad that there's kind of a story mode versus a game mode that you can kind of turn down the difficulty in the combat if you want to experience the story. And CrisTales was one that the art style is really kind of a beautiful animation, and also because I've been playing Bug Fables and thinking about those types of kind of RPGs, that it was one that I was interested in. So I wanted to. So those were demos of games that I actually was interested in playing because I'm interested in the content. The two other RPG ones were very much. I was looking for other kind of dungeon crawler, potentially action RPGs, because I did pick up Torchlight 3. To play as well, and so I wanted something to kind of contrast with, like, how are other people playing with this genre, because at this point Torchlight 3 doesn't really feel like it's doing a whole lot new with the genre, so that's why. So it became more of a contrast for analysis more than a virtual E3.
Okay, gotcha.
All right, so while I've been playing some new stuff, you have gone back to one of the E2KG's favorites with Destiny 2.
Yeah, ish. And of course, a couple weeks ago, or maybe last week, Swiss called me a fake Destiny 2 gamer, so time to get him back a little bit for that. So this is a little weird. So my main game for this week was actually Deep Rock Galactic. So my new video game day was last Saturday, and I picked up Deep Rock Galactic. What I try and do is I try and have like a main during the week, and then I have flex days, when I'm not streaming, to play something like off stream or just do a local recording and check out. And so one of my flex days, I had occasion to go back and check out Destiny 2. I was in the middle of, most recently, of the Shadowkeep DLC. I had entirely forgotten that the new season was dropping. So season 11 came out back on, I think, June 9th-ish.
Yep. Yeah, it was last Tuesday. I mean, a week ago Tuesday.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, and of course, and granted, I'm doing this by skipping a little bit because I kind of, and I think that's okay, because I think as I've come through it, I've come through more of an evaluative look at Destiny 2 in terms of the DLC, and a feeling that, not every Destiny 2 DLC is for me. As it changes, as I engage with that game, and it my paradigm changes from, it used to always be about checking out the new story, and violently, resisting getting involved anywhere in the grind of Destiny 2, right? In the progression loop of Destiny 2 for the players who play it all the time. I'm just not I'm not interested. Like, it doesn't matter like what my armor looks like compared to somebody else's armor. I'm not looking to establish cred in Destiny 2, right? Like, so it's always been about the participation in that story. But through some of the ones that I've skipped or bounced off of, I've come back around to, I was playing Shadowkeep recently, and number one, I didn't realize that the season 11 kickoff was going to have a new story loop to it. So this is the first time in a very long time, maybe forever, maybe since Taken King, that I had actually like gotten through. I had some rationale for where I was being, and wound up being close to being ready to consume that season 11 content, right? In the past, I've always been like a DLC or two behind when the new one dropped, and I just wasn't interested in playing through like 2 or 3 DLCs to get caught back up to a new thing. But I went ahead and pounded through Shadowkeep. I actually wound up finishing it last night. Didn't realize I was as close to completing it, and then I had to go back and do some redos because I had in my rapid haste of like disassembling anything that I don't need, that I don't really care about vaulting. I had disassembled my a piece of my Dreambane armor, so I had to go back and redo some missions to be able to reclaim that. But I wound up finishing up the Shadowkeep armor last night. I think I played like a couple of hours in the morning a couple days ago, or maybe yesterday, and then played about 3.5 hours last night and wound up finishing it.
So you just finished. Okay, so it's actually, you're in a good spot. The new kind of season directly ties in with Shadowkeep in terms of the conclusion. So where for everybody else who has played through the other seasons that feel kind of very tangential or kind of side stories that don't actually have necessarily maybe a satisfying conclusion, that ideally this provides you a little more narrative through line.
Yeah, and the reason it piqued my interest, because and maybe this isn't necessarily the best game design, but when you boot the game after season 11 has dropped, it forces you into the start of the season 11 new adventure loop. So now you can back out of it, but you get exposed to that story. But yeah, I was able to tell that it was directly connected to the end of Shadowkeep or Shadowkeep, which is part of the reason that it piqued my interest. Like if it had been kind of the old way, it had been a completely different, and disconnected story loop, I may not have been interested, but the way it was presented, I was like, well, great Scott, like I should just go ahead and finish Shadowkeep and pop right into the season 11 stuff. So, in conjunction with that, I've been paying, I hate to use the term, take it more seriously, but I've actually been paying attention to things that I have historically ignored. I used to never care about exotics, now, I've been, used to historically not care about keeping my vault cleared out of like things I didn't need. So I went back and got rid of a lot of like, old, greens and blues and things that I didn't really care about, uncommons and rares, and really focused on my legendaries and my exotics, as well as, weapon slots and armor slots and shaders. I talked a couple weeks ago about how I kind of changed my shader paradigm and wasn't shading every piece of equipment that I was using all the time. I also kind of settled down last night into using, I used to do this whole thing of like every like 10 or 15 minutes I was switching weapons, but really like settling into like a weapon set and focusing on playing that for the majority of the time. A lot of my experience with Destiny 2, much as it was with Borderlands, was really about just that, gun pornopalooza of just like, switching through, every single weapon. But, Destiny 2, I don't want to, it's better than Borderlands in terms of, the big problem with Borderlands, particularly the first couple games, was that the weapon palooza just degenerated to where you were just numb to it. And it didn't really matter, like weapons didn't feel different, outside of their class, and outside of their manufacturer. They did a lot better with that in Borderlands 3. But with Destiny 2, it's always been a little more acute in the differentiation between weapons. But, it still suffers from, there's a ton of weapons, and I always feel obligated, in a survey. I call them, in survey sims, but, whenever I'm given like lots of cars and lots of weapons, I feel an obligation to use them all. So I kind of started backpedaling off of that. But the biggest thing probably yesterday or last night with the design is, and this is where I fall in this crevice of, is this good or is this bad, is, again, there's tons of things in Destiny 2 that I ignore. And my analogy is to a certain thing in racing games that I hate. So I don't mind drifting in racing games. I don't mind having drifting events in racing games. I absolutely despise when you gate my progress by forcing me to play a drifting event in order to progress through or complete the game. Because if I buy a racing game because I really love like the door-to-door, wheel-to-wheel, straight stick racing, either on a circuit or in a sprint, then that's what I want to do. Like, I'm okay with drifting, but I hate the squishy subjectivity of like a point-based, you got to score 30,000 drift points to get through this. Like and then the times you're not fighting an opponent, but even it's almost worse when you are fighting an opponent for points in a drift rate. Like I can't stand it. I'm like, look, I just need 2 cars on a track and I need one to finish first, right? Like that's. But the analogy.
So where's right? Tell me where that fits with Destiny. Yeah.
So the point is, like, I don't like things being forced into my windshield that I have to surmount when they are not core. So there's things in Destiny 2 that I don't do, and one of those big things is I don't do lost sectors. Like, I'm not. In fact, I would just couch the whole paradigm of, I've said it many times before, and you guys are very familiar with it. I am not going to go outside the game to Google, like, all this crap that I have to find to participate in your game, right? Either give it to me all in-game and make it patently obvious, or in my progression path, or don't bother me with it. In Lost Sectors is one of those things, like, in a lot of cases, like, you can't find a lost sector, or you can't find a location. There's location. The point is, if you're not familiar, there's locations on the map that are not named on the map, right? And in a lot of cases, you have to find those. They're through underpasses, they're in tunnels, there's goofy holes in sections of the map that, like, and unless you lay down a grid-oriented search and, like, check off, like, each grid that you search, like, you're not going to find the stuff. And so, in a little way, I had to do that with the Dreambane armor, just like, I dismantled my Dreambane armor, like, there's a mission here that requires you to have that equipment, what do I do? Like, and so part of me says, well, the design should be that you shouldn't be allowed to dismantle your Dreambane armor if you're going to require it for a mission. Like, what in the world is that? And there's a path to recoup that, but again, it's like, again, if I go back in time for people who aren't familiar, who are listening to this, Destiny has one of those things where they're constantly throwing things up in your face where it's like, hey, go to the Grimoire, go to this, go to that, like, go to Bungie.net and look. I'm like, no. So, but I backpedaled a little bit off of that last night. And like I said, I looked up the Dreambane thing, but a big thing was you had, in order to reclaim your Dreambane armor and progress through some of the stuff in Shadowkeep, back in Forsaken, Forsaken is one that I bounced off of because you had to complete bounties. And I'm not a bounty hunter. Like, I don't do bounty. Like, I will buy bounties and I'll put them in my inventory, but then they're just things that I finish by happenstance. Like, I don't deliberately go into a game and go, oh, let me look at my bounties and let me do, like, these 5 things over these next 2 hours. That's just not the way that I play it. So, in Shadowkeep, you have to do that. It was presented to me one time in Forsaken. I was like, I tried it twice, and I was like, yeah, forget that. Like, I'm not doing it. But this time around, I did. And so it involved doing bounties, which I don't do. It involved, figuring out how to reassemble or regain my Dreambane armor, which normally I wouldn't do. Normally, in months past, I would have seen that, and I was like, well, I'm not going to finish Shadowkeep, right? And then you had a requirement to defeat nightmares on the screen who are not located on the moon, which is the central location for Shadowkeep. They're located on other planets in the galaxy. So you have to go to these other planets on the galaxy. You have to go into lost sectors. You have to find them if you haven't found lost sectors before. And you have to find the nightmares and defeat them. So again, normally not a thing that I would be bothered with doing. But I kind of... am committing myself a little bit more to Destiny 2 and figuring some of those things out and spending the time Googling to find them.
So you talked about picking up Deep Rock Galactic. So why did you choose that as your pickup for the week, the month, in this period?
So this is actually... So I made the conversion last month, and I feel like I always have to say this. I made the conversion last month to thinking about gaming on PC only. I do stream. I don't approach things, I think, from what a lot of people would assume is a streamer mentality, or the reasons that streamers do things. I think there's a specific reason some streamers transition to only gaming on PC that has to do with streaming. I approach it from more of a gamer perspective. So like I said, I made that transition. So this is the first, so last month I made some game pickups that were part of that transition that were more corrective action because there were some things I played that I, bounced off of or didn't work or whatever. So this was the first month with a new video game pickup where I was in the mold of being only a PC gamer. And that kind of drove my purchase paradigm and purchasing decision. So Deep Rock Galactic was just, I do go by review scores. I do look at Metacritic. Deep Rock Galactic was out of early access. It has been in early access for the last couple of years. It was proving pretty fairly popular, and was scoring high enough on Metacritic that I felt confident in it. Now, PC is a little different. Things don't always necessarily burble to the surface on Metacritic like they do with consoles. And so I have a deeper cut in evaluating like a new game pickup, which involves going through some of the Steam reviews as well. Steam has a problem where I get it, I understand it, where you know the workstation client, the client app on one of your machines cues off of what you've played, which I understand, but I play tons of different genres. So when I come up and I go to Steam and I look at like what's in my queue, what it wants me to look at is often tightly associated with what I most recently played. And that's not always what I'm looking for. Sometimes I haven't played a genre in a couple months, but that's what I'm looking for. But it just clutters up the queue. But it also doesn't surface new releases. So I have this paradigm where I now go and look at the web version of Steam and don't log in. So it presents to me the new releases, which is really what I'm looking for. So a combination of Metacritic and it being propagated pretty high in the new release list is what led me to check out Rock Galactic.
So are you enjoying it?
I do.
Have you gotten far enough yet to make a judgment?
Yeah, there's a lot of similarities between Destiny 2 and Rock Galactic. It leaves me questioning, and maybe this is just because I didn't do the early access and I'm not as familiar with the history of the plan for Rock Galactic. So first of all, I haven't seen any microtransactions, in that game, which is really surprising. It has skins and the equivalent of shaders and different facial features and hats and stuff like that, like everything that everybody else does microtransactions with that are not microtransactions in Rock Galactic. It's all earned by in-game currency, and that's cool, but by the same token, there's also no way to just buy it, which for some people might be discomforting. Again, in an era where skins and things matter. Rock Galactic is a co-op game, so I haven't played it in co-op, but the setup for it is very much like Left 4 Dead or Left 4 Dead 2, where you can just kind of, or Strikes in Destiny 2, where you can just kind of arbitrarily wade into to matchmaking and be paired up with someone to go through an adventure. Mines are procedurally generated, so you would think that in most cases, probably in almost every case, when you when you initially choose to go into a mine mission, it's different every time you go into it, more so notionally when you go in for co-op, so you may have played a mission before, but then you regenerate that mission to go into it, co-op, then you expect like a different layout, yeah, I've enjoyed it. It's again, it meets one of my key core requirements now for a co-op or a persistent progression or an online multiplayer game, which is that I have to be able to solo queue, because I don't play with people that often. It does absolutely allow you to do that. It's a super high interest level even when you solo queue. I imagine it's a lot of fun when you play with people. Again, I get really bothered by games that require a high degree of collaboration that you go into with when people are not on comms. So I need to kind of check that out and see what the community's like. But you basically you have 4 different classes. You pick a class. You have a progression loop of like weapons, your binding tool, which is specific for each character. When you go in single player, you get a bot that's not necessarily because you don't have another player, you get a drone basically that goes along with you. That's part of the progression model, so you can invest in its capabilities as well along the way. You can make purchases of like cosmetics. So you have about 3 or 4 different progression loops in there. Like I said, every time you go into a mine, it's different. You have a scanning tool that you can use. You have different mission setups, so sometimes you're going after a mineral, and there's like dozens of different minerals, so that of different frequency and availability and type. So that loop is always different. There's a mineral that you can mine that allows you to call for a new loadout. So that's another activity-oriented thing in the game, and a thing to be managed. Because you go into some mines and you're like, some mines, the first couple of mines I could get through without needing an additional loadout. Like ever since then, I've needed to be concerned about resupplying myself while I'm down in a dungeon. You know, there are different ways to go about objectives. You know, you go about mining for a particular mineral different than you do go about mining for eggs. So yeah, so it's pretty dope.
Yeah, it sounds. I mean, as somebody who loves Destiny Strikes and likes that kind of jump in, you know, random multiplayer, you know, co-op pieces, this actually sounds really good. Been looking up a couple things, you know, some screenshots of it. Now I've got to dig a little bit deeper. So it's always great. Thanks for helping me discover something new.
Yeah. If you jump into it, definitely let me know. There's a lot of similarities in that game between. I would say, you know, my mashup perspective is like Destiny 2, Gauntlet, and Diablo 3 is kind of what it harkens me to, because there's a lot. Mines are basically dungeons, so it's a lot of like dungeon crawling kind of perspective. And it's dark, so just like in Diablo 2, at least, you know, where you go into a dungeon and you only have like limited visibility of what the rest of the layout of the dungeon is. It's definitely invoked, you know, that need for me to like pick a wall and hug it and circumnavigate like the mine until you figure out, you know, you understand where you are and how it's mapped. So yeah.
Cool. Well, so as you're talking about loot games like Diablo, I picked up, as I had said before, I picked up Torchlight 3. I'm only 2 hours into it right now, so I'm going to come back to it on the next GX show. Give it a little more time. I've tried the new characters, like the Railmaster, who lays down track, and you have kind of basically a little trolley car that follows you behind that has a turret on it. There's kind of a steampunk robot that has a gun cannon out of his belly. Can equip weapons like normal, but, you know, does some different kind of area of effect attacks. You know, builds up heat as his gun's firing and can release it as kind of a area of effect. And then there's a standard kind of rogue, you know, range and a mage as well. It is there, you know. There's some crafting, there's resources to collect, you know, so, but I haven't really unlocked all of that yet, so this is why I'm kind of hesitant to say more. It is fun. It's pretty simple at this point. It is early access. You know, the first couple of days there were lots of server issues. It's been more stable. They did another patch, I think Tuesday, that added some stability to it. I've been playing it kind of and watching something in the background and trying to figure out some things. Right now I'm still kind of parsing out how much of this feels like it's the what parts feel designed and what parts feel left over from the free-to-play model that they started at with Torchlight Frontiers. Some of those kind of crafting pieces, it feels like there could be some of that in there. What it really has made me think about is to go back and play Torchlight 2 on Steam with mods. You know, I think Torchlight 2 on Steam with Steam Workshop and all the mods is such a complete experience, so refined that it's tailor-made. You can, you know, add in all kinds of different mods for different classes to make it your own kind of experience, where at this point Torchlight 3 feels really light when you're coming from that type of alternative.
Well, let me ask you, so I fell in love with Torchlight, the first one, and Torchlight for me was a spiritual experience in exercising the defects of Diablo 2, right? So, I mean, that development team, are many of them are expatriates from Blizzard, and that's kind of how Torchlight was approached in its origin. Are you carrying any of that kind of baggage with you into Torchlight 3? And do you feel that's affecting how you're kind of viewing it? And now that Torchlight 3 is a game that's coming out after you've onboarded with Diablo 3, is there any likeness or comparison between the two there? And is there one that feels more preferential to the other at all?
Sure. I guess I'm not deep enough in to make a judgment yet, right? I think that Torchlight 3 feels very similar to Torchlight 2 in terms of its bigger open world. You get kind of the quest hubs a little bit, certainly more, it feels more like Torchlight 2 than it does Torchlight 1. But Torchlight 2 also felt, I don't know, right? I mean, this is where the challenge is, it's early access. Torchlight 2, when it came out, was out, and the world felt, more alive. The challenge here at this point is, in its early build, I don't know that it doesn't feel like an evolution or advancement in anything that either Torchlight 2 or Diablo 3 has done. So that's where I kind of need to dig a little bit deeper into the systems right now. I know that there's not as deep of skill trees. You get a more limited skill tree. You don't actually have skill points. So there's some limitations there. So this is where it starts to feel a little bit stripped back. And how much of that is the acknowledgement of it being in early access, and how much of it being previously a free-to-play game that some of those things might have been progression and gated, or some of those things maybe were stripped out so it was a little more accessible. So this is where it really is kind of a mixed piece. So at this point, I'm reserving judgment, but I'm enjoying it. I'm certainly enjoying it, but it feels very samey as well. So we are past our time here, so I'm going to kick us into our next PickZ PlayZ, which is, as you said, space, the final frontier. In the lead up to the show and the beginning of the show, I talked about a play where we had the leak and a lot more details about Star Wars Squadrons this week and tonight. So with kind of the blackness, the bleakness of space and the beauty of space getting back in front of us, we are going to revisit some space games from our libraries. We're going to, it doesn't necessarily have to be a flight game. It could be about, but it is about traveling and exploring, right? There's a reason that we are invoking the opening of Star Trek and not necessarily the action arcadey adventure swashbuckling of Flash Gordon and Star Wars. So we are thinking about adventure. But actually, as I say the swashbuckling Flash Gordon, I see what Agasicles has put down as his assignment, as his text for the assignment, which is Destiny 2. So we'll see where he lands and how space feels there, as he's already acknowledged tonight on the show that he doesn't really like to explore lost sectors. So we'll see where his exploration and his adventure come from space in Destiny 2. I am going to dive back into No Man's Sky now that it's got crossplay, where we might pick it up here on the podcast. All of us have it in some capacity, but I know that I want to get back into it in PSVR as well. So, Agasicles, thank you. Thank you for a good show. Thank you at least for a good conversation. Whether or not it's a good show is up to our audience and our listeners, but really it was an enjoyable conversation as it always is. Enough to keep going here. We are every week, whether it is our every other week GX shows, our game experience show, or alternating deep dive news of the week shows and analysis, we will keep coming back to you week after week. So, for myself, DBqHams and Agasicles Steams, play the games you love the games you play, and love those and be kind to those that you are playing with. Take care and good night.